On March 28, 2021, a single wave swept 2 men off the South Pier at Silver Beach in St. Joseph, Michigan, and 27-year-old Dakota Yurgo, the one who could not climb out, was recovered near that same pier more than 2 weeks later. A Great Lakes pier looks like the safest place on the whole shoreline. Long, solid, flat, a walkway out over the water with a lighthouse at the end. That is the deadliest thing about it. The pier is not a safety feature, it is the hazard, and the reason is written into how it was built. The obvious question is how a motionless slab of concrete kills people swimming near it. The answer is that a Great Lakes pier was never built for people. It was built for ships. Almost every major harbor on the Great Lakes is man-made. Wave action piled up sandbars that blocked nearly every natural river mouth from serving as a port. So beginning in the 1800s, the United States Army Corps of Engineers cut channels through those bars and lined them with long piers and breakwaters, walls of stone-filled timber crib and concrete reaching out into the lake. Their job, in the Corps' own words, is to keep shipping channels open by reducing shoaling and to shelter harbor entrances from waves. They run perpendicular to the shore for that reason, to hold a navigation channel open against the lake. The lighthouses tell you what these places were for. The picturesque light at the end of so many Great Lakes piers, the one in every photograph, the reason people walk out in the first place, was not put there for beauty. It marked the entrance to a shipping channel for freighter captains, part of a working navigation aid in an era when these harbors moved lumber and iron and grain that built the middle of the country. South Haven's light stands at the end of a 1,200-foot engineered pier for exactly that purpose. It is one of hundreds along the lakes where sandbars once blocked a natural port. The Corps has been dredging, building, and maintaining these harbors since 1824. The pier is old industrial equipment with a scenic reputation, and the photograph people hike out to take is a picture of the machine that endangers them. There are 135 coastal towns on the Great Lakes with these federal structures, and the walkway a family strolls out at sunset is, in engineering terms, shipping infrastructure that happens to be walkable. Recreation was never the point, which means every feature that endangers a swimmer is the design doing its job, not failing at it. The tension is built into the engineering itself. To hold a channel and turn back waves, a pier needs to be solid and vertical-sided, and a solid vertical wall is exactly the shape that reflects waves and deflects currents most violently. A structure kinder to swimmers, sloped, permeable, and wave-absorbing, would be worse at protecting the channel. The two goals pull against each other, and the channel wins, because that is what these structures were federally authorized and funded to do. Some of the piers date to the mid-1800s, and many were rebuilt in concrete and steel a century ago, and the Army Corps maintains them today to keep commercial navigation moving, a system supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs and tens of billions of dollars in trade. In that ledger, the swimmer beside the pier does not appear at all. Start with the current, because it is the core of the story. It has a name, a structural current, and unlike most dangers in the lake, it is almost always there. The obvious question is what a wall has to do with a current. The answer is geometry. When waves roll toward a beach at an angle, which is most of the time, they push water sideways along the shore in what is called a longshore current. On an open beach, that water just slides down the coast. But a pier is a wall standing in its path, and when the sideways moving water hits it, the water has nowhere to go but out, deflected 90 degrees and funneled straight along the structure, away from shore, into deep water. The National Weather Service describes exactly this. The longshore current hits the pier, gets deflected, and runs out toward the lake, leaving a swimmer caught in it. In the agency's own words, little means of escape. And this is worse than an ordinary rip current for one reason: permanence. A classic rip forms and fades with the sandbars. It comes and goes. A structural current is made by a fixed object, so as the safety agencies put it, it is usually always present. The pier does not need a storm to become a machine that pulls people offshore. It is one every day. The waves come in at an angle. The West Michigan coastline, dense with these piers, records more current-related deaths than anywhere else on the Great Lakes. The escape is counterintuitive, which is another reason people die. The current runs along the pier, so the drowning instinct is to swim to that solid concrete and grab it, but the flow is driving outward, and fighting it head-on only exhausts a swimmer against water they cannot outmuscle. These currents can move fast enough to overpower even strong swimmers. The guidance is to swim parallel to shore, out of the current's path before heading in. Almost no one caught off guard does that. Now the waves, because the pier does something to them, the calm surface never reveals. The obvious question is why the water beside a pier is rougher than the water 50 yards away. The answer is reflection. A solid concrete and steel pier does not absorb a wave, it bounces it back. On the side the waves are hitting, the incoming waves collide with the reflected ones and stack, combining into steeper, taller, more chaotic peaks than anywhere else on the beach. On the Great Lakes, waves already arrive fast, every 3 to 5 seconds, giving a struggling swimmer no time to recover. Next to a pier with the reflections, that interval can drop to 2 or 3. No rest, wave after wave, from 2 directions at once. This is why the agencies keep using the same phrase: a washing machine. The structural current pulling one way, the longshore current another, incoming and reflected waves crashing from 2 sides, and a swimmer in the middle moved from one current to the next with no clear path to shore, tumbled and fatigued until they cannot stay up. A 3 to 5 foot wave, the Weather Service notes, can knock an adult off their feet. And you do not have to be swimming to be caught. People are standing on the pier, like the 2 men at Silver Beach, when a wave washes clean over the concrete and takes them off it. The cold finishes what the chaos starts. Even in summer, the Great Lakes hold cold water, and in spring and fall, when some of the deadliest pier incidents happen, it is frigid. A person swept in faces not just the current and the waves, but cold water shock. The involuntary gasp, the fast loss of muscle control that can disable a swimmer in minutes. The March evening that took Dakota a year ago was exactly this. Not a summer afternoon with a lifeguard, but cold, early spring water, a big wave and a solid pier that put 2 men directly over the deep. And the deck itself is a trap most people never think about. A pier looks like dry land, so people walk to the end and stand there watching the waves, not registering that a big enough wave does not stop at the edge. It overtops the structure, sweeping across the flat concrete with enough force to knock a standing adult off their feet and carry them into the water on the far side. The Weather Service's own hazard guidance is blunt about it. On days with high, rapidly breaking waves, waves wash over the piers, and the safe distance is not the railing, it is the shore. People who never intended to swim, who came only to walk out and take a photograph, end up in the deepest, most violent water on the beach because they mistook a wet, wave-swept wall for a promenade. The 2 men at Silver Beach were not swimming, they were walking. Then there is the surface of the pier itself, which lures people out to the exact spot where all of it converges. The obvious question is why anyone walks onto a structure this dangerous. The answer is that it does not look dangerous. It looks like the most solid ground on the beach, and it invites you toward the deep end. Grand Haven's pier runs about 1,400 feet. Frankfurt, Manistee, and South Haven all reach many hundreds of feet into open water. Walking to the lighthouse feels like an achievement, a photograph. But it is a walk over progressively deeper, colder, more exposed water on wet concrete or stone, often with no railing, to a point far beyond where anyone could wade or be easily reached, and frequently slick because the same waves that stack against the pier wash across the top of it. People stroll out, jump off to cool down, or get knocked in, and now they are in deep water beside a current built to carry them further out. In 2016, a 17-year-old drowned after jumping from a pier near that same Silver Beach. There is a reason all of this ambushes people, and it is a false comparison everyone carries. The Great Lakes is the calm, friendly alternative to the ocean. No sharks, no salt, no tides. Fresh water you grew up in. The obvious question is why a lake should be more dangerous than the sea. The answer is the shape of the waves. Ocean swells are long and rolling, born far offshore, arriving with space between them. Great Lakes waves are wind-driven and short period. Steep, choppy, stacked close together, hitting every few seconds instead of every 10 or 15. That short interval is brutal. No lull to catch a breath, just relentless chop that exhausts a swimmer fast. Freshwater is also slightly less buoyant than saltwater, so a person floats a little lower and tires a little sooner. And there are no lifeguards on the vast majority of Great Lakes shoreline. Nothing like the guarded, flagged beaches of the coasts, so a swimmer in trouble beside a pier is very often entirely on their own. The lake looks gentler than the ocean and is, in these measurable ways, less forgiving. Stack that misplaced confidence on a structure engineered to pull people offshore, and the outcome is predictable. And the confidence is stubborn, because the pier keeps rewarding it. Most days, most of the year, walking out to the light is completely fine. The water is flat. The current is weak. Nothing happens. Thousands of safe walks build a sense that the pier is a safe place, a belief reinforced every calm evening. Then the wind shifts, the waves come up at an angle, and the same walkway that was harmless 100 times becomes a machine, and the person walking it has 100 prior trips telling them it is fine. That is the deepest trap of all. Not ignorance, but experience. The pier teaches people to trust it on the days it is harmless, so that they are still trusting it on the one day it is not. That is the pattern, and it is the part that should stay with you. This is not one pier or one bad season. Through November of 2025, 81 people drowned in the Great Lakes. 36 in Lake Michigan alone, nearly half the total, with 14 in the Chicago area. That is not an unusual year. Lake Michigan consistently leads all 5 lakes in drownings, and the piers run all through those numbers because its shoreline is dotted with the harbor towns the structures were built to serve. Over one recent decade, researchers logged more than 400 dangerous current incidents and 120 current-related deaths, most on Lake Michigan, most clustered when the waves top 3 feet, the exact condition that turns every pier into a washing machine. That 3-foot threshold is the whole danger window, and it is why the deaths are so predictable and so preventable. The Weather Service issues beach hazard statements precisely for these days, warning of high waves and structural currents, and the drownings track them closely, with roughly 2/3 of dangerous current incidents happening when waves exceed 3 feet. These are not calm afternoons that turn deadly by surprise. They are visibly rough days, red flag days, when the water is obviously churning and the piers are obviously being washed over, and people walk out and swim near them anyway, because the structure looks solid and permanent enough to stand against water that is knocking adults off their feet a few feet away. The warning exists. The forecast exists. The flags are up. The gap is not information. It is the refusal to believe that a concrete walkway could be the most dangerous place on the beach. The cases repeat with terrible consistency. A man walking a pier, swept off by a wave. A teenager who jumped to cool off and never surfaced. A swimmer pulled offshore while family watched from the beach. Many were strong swimmers. Few had any sense the structure itself was the danger. Some towns now fine people for walking onto the pier at all in high waves, having decided they would rather ticket you than recover you. And the rescue, when it comes, fights the same forces the victim did. Emergency crews cannot simply reach into a washing machine. The current and the reflected waves that trap the swimmer also endanger anyone who goes in after them, which is why so much of the response happens from boats and helicopters rather than from the pier. A single Great Lakes drowning that requires a Coast Guard launch can run into the tens of thousands of dollars an hour, and even then, the water often wins the race against time. Bodies swept off piers into cold, churning water are sometimes not recovered for days or weeks. Dakota Yergos took more than 2. That lag is its own kind of cruelty. A person vanishes off a walkway in plain sight of a town, and the lake simply keeps them until it is ready to give them back. The agencies that study this have converged on one blunt instruction, printed on sign after sign along these shores: steer clear of the pier. What is known is that the piers are doing what they were built to do, that the current running along them was never an accident, that the waves stack against the concrete exactly the way the physics says they must, every time the wind comes in at an angle, and that the PIR will look tomorrow morning exactly as safe as it looked the evening 2 men walked out and only 1 walked back, long and solid and flat, reaching toward the lighthouse over water that gives no sign of the current beside it, patient, permanent, pulling toward the deep, the way it has since the day it was built for the ships and not for the people who would come to love it.